So we see that breaking news now, the Strait of Hormuz closing down. Of course, we know 1/5 of the world's oil every day passing through the strait. What are the ramifications now that the strait is closed on the price of gas and oil?
Well, I mean, it's one thing to know it's happening now. It's another to know how long it will happen for. That's where the issue comes in. And we just heard, she just mentioned that, people are worried about recession. Inflation can really be a big factor here, especially as oil prices, gasoline prices, petrol prices, and jet fuel go up.
So it's not just about what you're feeling at the pump, is it? It's also about consumer products.
Of course, obviously we are looking at transportation between the Strait and Hormuz, but what really, across the board is prices go up. Jet fuel that really, moves a lot of cargo to major container ships that go move a lot of ships. They'll need fuel. They need jet fuel. They need bunker fuel. So as those prices rise, those costs go up too.
Carl, how much strategic reserves are there to blunt the impact of rising prices? Or is that inadequate at this point? Essentially, how close are we to a full-blown energy crisis?
It's a very good question because in other conflicts, we had much higher reserves here in the U.S. Other countries have very good reserves, but our reserves are down about 43% from when they peaked back, some time ago in 2009. So that's a bit of concern. We don't have that supply for an SPR, at least in the U.S., that we can lean on if something happened, of major concern. We really moved a lot of it out during the COVID crisis to kind of balance prices, but right now it becomes very tenuous.
Right, and it's not just the U.S. How resilient are global supply chains to a disruption of this magnitude, really?
Well, it's a lot of countries always kind of, keep filling up their reserves as prices dip and, and come back in. But right now, with prices so high, countries can't really make that purchases or add that supply because it's not ample. We have had a lot of supply on the market in the past few months, so that kind of helps buffer this. But a lot of that supply comes from Russia. So as long as the Russian-Ukraine conflict still continues, we really don't have the supply that's at hand.
Carl, so is the price surge we're seeing now driven by knee-jerk fear, or is there actual supply here that's at stake?
Well, I think that, again, it's the length of how long this goes. And the trouble becomes now is that, when we start running through supply at hand, where do we get that next supply? Everybody always says OPEC's going to raise supply and help from the market, but that supply comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And that becomes the issue. We have supply around the world, but can it get to the rest of the world?
So how high can the prices go, do you think? We've heard analysts today talk about $100 a barrel. JP Morgan Chase came out and said $120 a barrel. We know the all-time high, $139. Will we see that again?
It's that length, it's that time of length, really, that matters. The longer we see that area shut up, or an extreme possibility, if something's damaged into the Strait of Hormuz, a ship goes down, a oil spill. If an oil spill, we can't get other tankers through there, it'll damage engines. And so all that cleanup, all the maintenance that has to happen in that area to make it safe, once something happens, it could see 100, 120 or higher. But again, it really matters on what we see happening going forward.
And then how worried are you about the attacks on infrastructure itself? Because as these refineries are hit, what then happens to production, on the large scale?
That is the outlier. We've seen conflicts in the Middle East, but they've been contained. This time around, we're seeing conflicts with retaliation in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, things we've never seen before. I mean, I know we've talked about what would happen if they attacked the U.S. It's attacking that Middle East area, that union there, that really is concerning. So we could see these things escalate, and if they do, it causes prices to go higher and higher and higher.
So, Carl, beyond oil then, what is the broader economic fallout that you fear? The markets, trade flows, inflation, what is the worst case scenario if this drags on for weeks, if not months?
It's really going to be that inflationary pressure. It really will be, because once we see oil prices go up and goods go up and supply goes up and commodities across the board start to rise because they can't travel without paying for extra costs, that's when you really see an overall effect across the globe. And that's when we'll have to see other nations really start to kind of try to step in and make this kind of some kind of resolution, or at least some kind of semblance of resolution.